Humanity, as we know it, is already facing an array of challenges, such as mounting social and wealth inequality, crippling debt, economic adversity, global warming, political instability, technological disruption, and so much more. In addition to all of this, the world must now stand witness to the deliberate and systematic extermination of innocent Palestinian children, women, and men by the few who are combining the most heinous characteristics of tyrants from the darkest days of human history, while feeding off the teat of American capitalism, who take from us and give to them. Understand this holocaustal genocide that the few are perpetrating, these images of dismembered human beings and babies and children alike that they publicize, has a desensitizing and very traumatic effect on our children and our nations, and we have to put a stop to it. If the few can publicly broadcast a genocide without any interruption, despite the majority of the world demanding a stop, then let us respond in kind, with a revolutionary response of far greater proportion that can stand the test of time, to stop it ourselves. But first, let's understand the tactics that they deploy generally, right? We have to better understand how they operate before building our response. These tactics are being broadcasted today. They're the same that the few have used from the dawn of time. Let's look at them. This genocide, right, in Palestine. This reminds me of another quote from Sun Tzu. Concentrate your force on one point. Think about how that reads and what it means. The power is in the concentration of a collective force in a single area. What he means here is to focus your resources, whether they be soldiers, weapons, supplies, on a single decisive point of attack. This allows the few to leverage the majority of their resources to win that battle in one specific area, because the power of that unified effort almost always deems a positive result. At the same time, Sun Tzu says, disperse your enemies on many points. By this, he means to divide the enemy's resources and attention across multiple fronts, so that we're unable to effectively defend ourselves against their attacks. This creates weaknesses in our defense and reduces our ability to resist their advance. The few's most valuable tactic throughout history has been and will almost always likely be to divide and conquer. The best way to control an overwhelming majority, or us for that matter, in kind of for their own gain, would be to make us or make sure that we never see or hear or speak of the power we have in our collective efforts. So they break us apart into ethnic groups, cultural groups, economic groups, and come up with detestable names and push the narrative through the media. I want you to think about this. The words, whether it's niggas, hood niggas, house niggas, sand niggas, spics, terrorists, thugs, whatever you want to call it, okay? All these words, really, just let's not get it twisted. All these words that we do not hear that much anymore should worry us, because it was never addressed in the first place. And therefore, just like the other oppression, it's become part of the history they want to write for us. Let's take a look at how the few in this case, like the Jewish Zionists specifically, are keeping us scattered and apart today. Outside of calling all the innocent women and children rats or animals to dehumanize them, there's a lot more to it. Firstly, let's talk about the political and diplomatic influence, right? They've been supporting sideline fractions of Muslims in the Middle East, or at least in the Middle Eastern countries, for the purposes of using this support against them at times like this in order to keep them from getting involved. I'll give you an example. So hundreds of millions of dollars of funding have gone coincidentally over the last few years to Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, for investments in all sorts of areas, right? This false sense of promise of camaraderie is to parade around a friendly oppressor. I think it's important to understand it's preconceived. They've thought about this already. Okay, so this oppressor that they want to kind of, it's like, think about this, painting a colored wig and a tutu on Hitler, dressing him up for a Dr. Seuss book, right? Trying to say that this is somebody different and it's not who you think it is. It doesn't work. So after these investments were made into these countries and accepted by the people that took them, the few now hold power of influence over them, right? Leaving them in a position of weakness, as you see today. Much of this money has gone to the Middle East and the UAE, as they seem to hold the most influence in the Muslim world, both strategically from like a geographic standpoint, as well as financially for the time being. And let's not forget the oil and gas supply that everybody so desperately wants to control. Secondly, They're using informational warfare. In a time where digital platforms, media outlets, news organizations prevail as a dominating force to feed the world any narrative you want, they have been fueling it with misinformation, purposefully, such as doctored religious context from doctored religious books and fake news that they've been creating in order to fuel controversy and discord amongst people, instead of allowing us a time to have a collective response, right? With every new finding of fake news by us, they buy more time to themselves to further their agenda. These findings create a false sense of accomplishment by us, getting us excited, believing that we've got some control over the narrative, when in fact, we don't control shit. This is all done by design to give the few more time while keeping us from forming any semblance of unity. There are also economic pressures that further scatter us. Israel has employed trade restrictions, sanctions, exacerbated economic disparities within Muslim countries, directly and indirectly, both through the United States, creating internal strife over financial resource allocation and economic policies, right? What does that mean? Well, this continues. An example is they've taken out hundreds of millions of dollars from the United States, from institutions, nonprofit organizations that they've been giving money to, the public, let's just say institutions such as schools and universities, with this false pretense of that they were in there to give it altruistically. Now, all of a sudden, they use their financial and economic power as a way to chokehold a nation and an organization that they pretend to help altruistically. Our policymakers, leaders, and politicians all scatter to focus in on how to best address this holocaustal genocide without losing the funds that their greedy souls want. On the military front, Israel engages in direct confrontation while supporting proxy wars on various fronts, right? Fostering insurgencies in nearby countries through border patrol interactions and fake Mossads all of a sudden being discovered. This never happened before, right? Forcing Muslim nations to now disperse their forces across various battlefronts to try and understand and mitigate these threats, which keep them busy. This is happening across all the borders around Palestine and happened in Turkey today at the moment. And this further weakens our potential for collective defense and allows Israel again to maintain a strategic advantage while again keeping us from a united front. And while all this has been happening, you'll now see growing diplomatic initiatives and all of a sudden peace talks shifting into gear, which will be used as further distraction, making Muslim nations and activists and leaders now investing time and resources into negotiations with the few, all while their agenda to continue this path of domination won't really pause. We've been involved in this fight for now almost a little over a month. This is by no means easy to look at or easy to understand. It's difficult, but the essence of scattering the enemy involves a combination of political, economic, informational, and military tactics to divert our attention and create this internal division. And it weakens the international community and the Muslims' ability to respond cohesively as one nation under God. It's a strategic dance, right? Designed to focus their strength in one place while inducing chaos and dispersion amongst the Muslim nations and all those that stand for justice across the world. This is a taste of how they operate.